taxes!
He's a 10.
I choose this family.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 142 of 911 Lone Star Roundup. I'm one of your hosts, EJ, and with me are my lovely co-hosts, Katie and Grace.
Hey guys.
Hey everyone.
Today we'll be talking about 813 of 911, which is titled Invisible. As always, we have so much to talk about, so we'll get started. As Grace also said, she has another name for this episode, and I totally agree with it. You want to share what it is?
Yes, I am very happy to. I really think they should have consulted me on this. The 1001 Reasons to Hate Helena Diaz.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
For sure.
Well, she drove me nuts. They actually both drove me nuts in this episode. Obviously, Helena way
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I feel like that, whatever that audio is, where it's just like, I am gonna punch this bitch or something like along the lines of that. That's how I feel. Every time I see her, I just want to punch her face. Get a little feisty over here.
Yeah,
That's how I feel.
definitely Ramon had his part in it too, but
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, Helena Diaz, if I see you in the grocery store parking lot, it's on site.
Oh yeah. But before we get to any more Helena Diaz stuff, we start the episode with what's about to be a call. So this guy getting fired from his job, it looks like he's maybe at some sort of like chicken fast food restaurant, and he comes back to his house and the place is a mess, so he starts putting things away, and it's one of those, like, I think I wanted to say it was like a captain's bed. Anyways, you lift up the mattress and part of the frame and then it's storage underneath, and so like he goes to put something in and he ends up falling in and so the bed like collapses on top of him and then he couldn't get it back up.
I would like to note that in The Sims, this is one of the ways that you can die, is by
Oh,
having the bed
yes. I
fall
forgot
on
about
you.
that.
I know, right? I was like, yeah, there's death by what is it? Yeah, because I think they have a futon and then they have like the Murphy bed.
Mhm,
Oh,
the
yeah,
Murphy
the
bed.
Murphy
It's
bed.
like, yeah, like Sims, yes. I've been playing it since 2000. And so anyways, so we learn that his fiance comes back to the apartment, which she wasn't there at the time, and she starts sleeping with somebody on top of the bed. And then people like yeah, and so we see the guy's watch is calling 911, and so the 118 respond, and they have to break in because nobody's responding to the door, and they go in there, like everybody was like nobody was expecting them to be walking into them having sex.
Can we talk about the fact that, like, when they're at the door, Buck was just like, we're gonna have to use a battering ram, and he was so excited. He has definitely been
So
waiting
excited.
for the day he can use this battering ram.
Right.
Which
I was
I
thinking
love
about
that for him.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. I was wondering if he was saying it loud enough, like excitedly, because he wanted it to be like heard on the other side. So like the people would like freak out that, oh my God, like they're gonna have to use, so I have to go check it.
I was wondering why they were shouting at the door. They
I
were
think it was
basically
just him
shouting.
just being excited because, like,
Yeah.
he's always like wanted to do that or something. I feel like we haven't really seen that. Like, we've seen them like kick open doors, but like not like
I'm pretty sure we've
anything
seen
like
them
that.
busted open before. I'm pretty sure we
Mhm.
have. I don't remember where, but I'm pretty sure we had to have in 8 seasons. We had to have had at least one
I mean, I'm
busting down
sure
the
we
door.
have, but like, I just think that like he just wanted to. I
Yeah.
feel like
Also,
it's
people
always
have been
somebody else.
pulling together gifts from like other seasons or scenes. And one of the common ones is him. Do you guys remember like the incident, like the car sales lot?
Oh,
And
yeah.
he just walked past the car salesman with the cheesiest grin on his face as he's holding a
Yep.
fucking saw.
Yeah.
Buck loves his
Yes.
equipment.
He loves his tools.
Yes, he does. So they, the 118 tell them, like, we're, here, somebody called 911. Like, we didn't call 911, we don't need help. And then all of a sudden you hear a voice from underneath the bed and they're like, I'm down here. And they finally get the guy out, and we find out that the guy that the gal was sleeping with was actually his cousin who'd been living with them. And awkward to say the least.
This scene
Like, it
was
was sort of
so
implied
cringy.
earlier, but
Yeah.
then we like find out for sure, and that's like, oh my God.
Yeah, this was like, it's just so cringy. Like the whole time I'm just like, can we just end this? Like I just it was the
Right.
worst.
Yeah, it was. And it gets worse throughout the episode with the same guy, which is crazy. But our next scene we get so Eddie's cooking, he's making dinner barbacoa for the family. Yep, he's in Texas for sure.
I was like, welcome to Texas.
Yep. And Buck, on FaceTime is like, you got this. And Eddie's doing this because he's hoping Chris will move back in with him. And Eddie got them tickets to see the Mavericks, and he wants to surprise Chris at dinner with them.
So naturally, this is going to go wrong, and we all know
right.
this.
And he's like staring at the slow cooker, counting down, and it's got like 11 minutes. And he's like, I want this to be good, and blah blah blah. They show up early, and so of course they brought takeout. He's like, I told you I was cooking. And she's like, yeah, now we have more options. And she's like opening the lid and like looking inside. I'm like, lady, seriously?
Yeah, that's just like, to me, that's very disrespectful, because it's just like, it's so rude. It's just like, you don't bring takeout. Like, I get that we all joke that Eddie is like a terrible cook, but you need to at least.
And he was once.
Yeah. But I feel like he's trying to work on it, and he's trying to do that. And it's just like, listen, that is just so rude to show up because you were expecting the meal to turn to shit. And I'm just like, that really pissed me off.
Helena Diaz, they can never make me love you.
Nothing will make me love her.
There are characters I'll say will never make me hate you. No, there are characters I'll say they'll never make me love you.
Agreed.
Right. So then over dinner, they're talking, and it's very interesting because they're happy, they're celebrating. Chris got such a good report card on his most recent one, and Eddie's,
we know our kid's smart.
Yeah. Eddie starts talking about he's got a surprise for Chris and for that weekend, and they're like, oh, he has a chess tournament that weekend. And Eddie's like, well, he'd like to be there. And Hannah was like, well, Ramon is going. And Chris says, Eddie doesn't have to go that because it's pretty far away, and they're only letting one parent go on the bus. I guess that wherever this is they're taking him by bus. So Eddie's like, you can definitely tell that Eddie's like not real happy that he's going to get to miss out on that, because that was the whole point of him going to Texas, was to be back in his son's life. And now here he's like basically saying, yeah, you don't have to go, it's okay. Like, yeah, no, that's not okay.
That was like, also,
it just gets disheartening.
Yeah, if he had a chess tournament, like, why is Eddie just finding out about it now?
Good question.
Yeah.
So then we see Hen, and she's doing like a mini fashion show for herself. She's changing outfits, and then she gets to where she totally loves her outfit, and she goes out to see everyone, and nobody's paying attention to her. And then Mara says something to her, and she's like, it's a special day. And Hen's like, oh, thinking that she's talking about her birthday, and nobody is. So it's school picture day, so Mara's excited, and all of them, Denny, Karen, and Mara, forgot it was Hen's birthday, which, granted, in the
Mara
end of
gets
the
a
episode,
pass.
Yes, Mara gets a pass. I'm glad that they do agree that was her first time with them. But and then after everybody leaves because they're all screwing out to go to school and work, which Karen asks Hen if she can cook dinner because she didn't want to cook.
Get takeout,
and I was like, Hen's like, tonight.
I know, it was just like, to be honest, the first time I didn't really catch on right away what was happening, because of course there was that song in the montage playing that was like happy birthday, it said birthday about a bunch of times.
Right.
And I just didn't catch it the first time, but the second time of course I did, and I was like, oh yeah, this stings a little bit.
Yeah. And then so once they're all gone, Hen gets a call from Athena, and they're chatting, and she's like, my whole family forgot, that it's my birthday. And, but Athena remembered. She called and wished her a happy birthday. And then,
I love their friendship.
Hen's mom calls, and literally, it was totally a butt dial.
It was so funny.
It was so awkward. She's video calling her, but it's a butt dial. And her mom's like, well, I got you on the phone. She's like, Hen's thinking her mom's gonna remember that it's her birthday, and no, she just wants to borrow Hen's car.
You think you'd remember the anniversary of pushing a human being out of your crotch, but I guess not.
Fair,
I think you'd remember some of those things.
To be fair, I'm pretty sure my mom's parents on her last birthday forgot her birthday, and I'm like, I obviously didn't, but they did, and yeah, it happens. It's also Hen's like in her late 40s, so like I kind of
I think
understand.
she's
Not
in
that
her
you
early
shouldn't
40s.
feel special every year, but I feel like at some point, like some things, like not that you shouldn't feel special, but like some things kind of, get less special, or like you're just not celebrated as much. You should be celebrated every year, but like it's just how it is, especially like Ken being a mom and having a bunch of other things going on in her life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll say that like definitely stuff happens and sometimes you just forget what day it is. I will say that this storyline hit pretty hard for me because
Yeah.
I had family members forget my birthday this year, and that includes one of my sisters. And so that was just a couple of months ago. So it's still like, we've it's been put to rights since then, but it
Right.
definitely still stings a little bit. I was feeling
Right.
hen with this because especially because I am someone who does love my birthday and
Yeah, same.
does love doing stuff for it. And not a lot of not tons of adults do. Some adults actually really hate their birthdays, especially in like
Yeah.
my at least my generation. But like, I was feeling his pain with this, so I'm definitely like, obviously no one was being malicious,
Right.
like shit just happens, but
Yeah.
you don't have to be malicious to hurt somebody.
Right.
um
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I remember a few years ago, one of my friends, like, we hadn't really been talking at the time, but like, it wasn't like we weren't talking. And I remember she like didn't say happy birthday to me, and it was very hurtful. Like, I was very hurt, and I was upset about it for a while, to the
yeah,
point that
it
when it
just
was her birthday and we weren't really talking like on an active
Yeah.
basis, I like literally said nothing because I was just like, you know what, that was very hurtful. And like, if you really
Right.
cared, you would have said something. Because
Right.
I have a lot of friends. I also have like us friends. Like, we always say happy birthday to
Yeah.
each other every single year
yeah.
since we've been friends.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like other people in
Exactly.
my life, like it's always like that's what I love, is like people that are actively in my life do make things special.
Yeah.
So like it
Yeah,
is hurtful
absolutely.
when
And
people don't. So it is valid. Like, I totally understand Hen, and there's
mhm,
other things that come up in the episode where I'm like, I totally understand her point of
Mm-hmm.
view.
yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah,
do
for sure.
too. For me, it was weird because so my birthday is September 1st, so it falls like right around when school goes back into session for a lot of schools.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm,
like some years school hadn't started yet. Some years school was like started. Like I remember my 16th birthday, I started school on my birthday
Yeah.
because of
oh
just
yeah,
the way
rough.
it landed on the
Yeah.
calendar. And I remember, growing up, like I rarely ever had a birthday party on or around my birthday because friends were out of town, or school wasn't back in session. So people were, traveling. And so sometimes I do it earlier in August or sometimes I do it later in September. So for me, I'm just kind of used to celebrating my birthday later in the month. But
Yeah.
yeah, last year and a couple of years ago, there happened to be conferences that many of my friends attended, and it sucked because like I didn't go, finances and other
Mhm.
reasons. And yeah, I was just a little bummed. And like my current roommate was like a couple months ago was like, well, when's your birthday? And so I told her, and she's like, where was I last year? And I was like, yeah, you were out of town. She goes, I forgot your birthday. I wasn't here for it. And I was like, yeah, no one was. You were gone. My other friend was gone. My other friend was out of town. I ended up going down to my other friend's house and house sitting for 2 weeks because I was like, I just need some downtime. But yeah,
Yeah.
but I also feel what Hen's feeling because it's definitely been like, there's been times when people have like actively forgotten. And yeah. Anyways, then we see a scene where Eddie is running into his mom at the grocery store. So
Mhm.
he's coming out of the store with some groceries in the car, and he's loading or his cart, and he's loading up his car. And she comes up and she sees some of the things in it. She starts to kind of give him a hard time. He's like, "No, I'm delivering these. So this isn't his grocery order; it's somebody else's." And he asks if he can take Chris to the tournament. And she wonders. She's like, "Well, she's trying to haw around about it because like." Being on an Uber, sometimes weekends are more, better days to get Uber, clients and, different jobs. And then she's like, well, Ramon would have to give his seat up on the bus. And, and he's
Mm.
like, well, I guess he is his coach. And his mom's like, well, oh, there would be other tournaments. And I'm like, I get that Ramona's been coaching Chris in this, but the whole point of Eddie coming to Texas was to have his relationship with his son. I've said it already. And it's just like, woman.
Yeah.
And she's like just doing anything she can to keep Eddie away from Chris, almost is how I feel. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's totally wrong.
See, the thing about all of this is, here's the thing. I will not discount that the Diaz parents haven't had a role in Chris's life. They were there for him especially during his first few years of life. They were there to help Shannon as much as it sounds like Shannon got driven to insanity by it. They were probably well-intentioned, even if they weren't the best for her. And obviously, it was great that they could come and help out Chris when Chris needed space, when Chris needed to get away.
Right.
I just find it very interesting because like they were back when Chris was like 5 or 6, sitting Eddie down and yelling at him for not being an involved parent, even though he was working 3 jobs to try and support them.
Right.
But now they're like he is actively there. He just uprooted his entire life, and now he's not entitled to Chris's time necessarily or his forgiveness. We're still getting past some of those things that happened, the reason why Chris left, but he's there to try, and she's not, like, they're maybe purposefully not helping with that. So it's like not I don't know. It's just the way that they feel such an entitlement towards Chris and towards Chris's decisions, because Chris is still a minor. So
Right.
if they ultimately veto something, they could also get Eddie permanently like banned from being in places that Chris is, like school functions or stuff like that, if they really had a vendetta against him. So they just have that power. They have that sort of power, and it's not necessarily the best. Not saying they're gonna do that, but yeah, it's not great. Helena, I just wanted to strangle her in the scene.
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry, that was a
I've always been a
Like-
little irritated with them because I think it's even been mentioned in the show, like Eddie's like this scene totally made me feel like they were treating Eddie like Chris's older brother,
yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
not his father. And that's kind of the vibe I've been getting the last few episodes, is like they're treating him like Chris is their son, and that Eddie is interfering with Chris's life with them, and it just rubs me the wrong way, which we'll talk more about in a little bit, but
Right. Yeah, they're
yeah.
acting like full-on parents, and I get that they're essentially like his guardians at this time, whether if it's like how official it is, but it's just like it was the fact that like the food thing, she was acting like, okay, Eddie is a 30-year-old man in his 30s. It's not like he's like an 18-year-old that just moved out of mom and dad's house and she's
Right.
like criticizing. Yes, it wasn't his, he was delivering it, but it's just like, who the hell cares? Like,
Yeah.
and stuff. It's just like she was acting like they're better than him. Oh, we're better parents, but this is your grandchild, and like, yes, you stepped up for Christopher in this time, and like that won't be discounted, but it's also like you're not the parent, you're just, this is temporary. It's supposed to be that way.
Yeah, I just had a thought, and guys, remind me that I had a thought when we get to the Eddie and Chris's room scene, because it is best served there. But I just had anyway, yeah.
Okay,
But I
yep.
will say that later.
So then we see Hen showing up at the 118, and everyone's like, oh, like they're talking about how they've been waiting for her to show up, and she's like, hey fellas, what's the buzz? And she thinks they're like getting ready to like unveil a cake or something, and nobody specifically mentions it. And then Bobby's like, it's Hen Day, and Hen thinks like, oh, it's about her hen, and he's like, no, Hen is for the new high efficiency nozzles. And then Hen is like, you really had to call it that.
That was so funny. Like, I'm just like, like that is just like so coincidentally funny, and it's just like, yes, like the writing is very deliberate, but I'm just like, it's just funny that that's what that was, and everyone's like, come on, be excited about it, and Hen's like,
Right.
seriously, you couldn't have thought of something else?
Yeah, the salt in the wound that is he wrote.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, they're
Literally.
so oblivious about it.
They
Yeah.
really are.
So yeah, the first call they get, or a call they get, is so the guy from the first call is back, who had gotten stuck under the bed. He had to pull into some place, like somebody's like loading zone or whatever, like for a semi truck to change his flat tire. And as he's, working on getting everything out, one of the nuts gets stuck. It ends up bouncing away and ends up between some like semi truck tires. So him being an idiot decides to go over and get it, but it's not just, right next to the tire, it's like in between. And so he like tries to start wedging himself in there, and then nobody sees him. So the driver gets in the truck and starts to pull away with the truck. And this guy gets wedged like even deeper into like between the wheel and the semi truck trailer. And so obviously the 118 show up to help, and they all recognize him as
Well, Hen's the one that recognized him first.
Hen's the first one that recognizes him.
Yeah.
And he's talking about him being used to being invisible, and then she's like, well, you're not invisible, and you're allowed to take up space. And at the ambulance, after they do rescue him, Penn is trying to give him a pep talk. And then she's like, she mentions something, and when your friends forget your birthday. And then it was like everyone was just kind of like, you could see Buck and Bobby and Jim were all kind of like,
they have loading screens in their brains right now. Wait, what?
Right?
Yeah, like Chimp, I feel like caught on the fastest.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like
well, he's known her the longest.
Yeah, I would hope so. Yeah, it was this like her giving this whole speech to him, and like, see, like the thing is obviously like Hen gets feeling invisible, gets feeling like you're not seen, not only as a Black woman, but obviously as somebody that's queer, she feels that way. So I feel like this is why she resonated most. And I know that's why like the fan reactions on this whole storyline with her birthday being forgotten has like varying opinions on, because people are like, but it goes back to like her not feeling seen, and I'm like, I get that, but also like it's so many other things too. But I get like what we see from Hen. I totally get like her, like what she says, and like it's like the best one to give a pet talk and anything like this, because even if it's not for those reasons, like she gets it.
I mean, like so many people can give talks about what it means to feel invisible. I could give a talk on what it means to feel invisible.
Yeah, me
any
too.
queer person, also like especially queer people, POC, anything like that, but especially a queer person of color. Like being able to give that, especially in a male dominated field that she had to fight tooth and nail to get into and to stay in, she can definitely give that pep talk. And I was there the entire time with it. I was like, yeah, fucking speak, girl. You are allowed to take up space in this world. I feel like so many people need that pep talk, because so many people put themselves into boxes and make themselves feel invisible because they feel embarrassed about being a burden, about taking up space. It's the mortifying dilemma of being perceived, except you deserve to feel perceived. So fucking speak, girl, is what I'm saying.
Literally, yeah. Also, like, I feel like anybody can feel not seen. Like, when I was in school, I didn't really feel seen because I had like learning difficulties. I had like that, and I just felt like that put me like in a box, even if like I don't know. It's just like I never like I always felt invisible. I always felt like people like that, but like now, like obviously a lot of has changed, but I just like I get like just feeling like you don't matter and you're not like people don't see you the same. So like it's like anybody can feel that way, which
anyone can.
That's like powerful in a way too.
It's not just a message for one group of people, like anybody can feel that way. And I absolutely agree with that. I also just think she was the best person to say that, but it will resonate with anybody. So go ahead. But also I loved watching everybody just scramble to be like, fuck.
Right. Yeah. Basically, you can see their wheels turning. Yeah. So then so Buck is at the station. He calls Eddie and asks Eddie what Hen's favorite pie is. And Eddie's totally like, you forgot our birthday, didn't you?
That was so funny. And like pie, that's like, oh, so random. Like I can understand that
well,
everyone's
he was probably going to go
cake
bake
person.
Right. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
duh.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know
was like,
why
Buck's
that
like,
didn't
I'm gonna
connect
bake a
to my
cake or bake a pie
brain.
for her.
I didn't even think of it till literally right now, but I was like, oh wait, he was probably just gonna go bake it. Maybe he doesn't feel comfortable with cakes yet. Also, they
Oh
take a
yeah,
while.
totally.
See, I guess being the bakery girl, I'm just always like, oh, cake.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't get me wrong, I love cake.
And I love Eddie's comment about, yeah, he's like, he remembered because of Facebook, and Buck's like, how old are you? It's not like Buck's much younger than him.
I know, that was
Also,
my
I think
thing.
it's worth noting we didn't get an answer.
Right. That is true. We didn't. But
Well,
if they put a numerical number on Eddie's age, people are gonna flip out because they're gonna be like, it's the right age, it's the wrong age. Well, according to our system, I was like, if we so it's probably safe that they didn't.
see,
Yeah, I think at this point they're like, oh, it's just safer if we never answer that
I
question.
know, it's like, so I know when Buck was struck by lightning, they said he was 31,
33,
was
I
it?
think.
30.
33? I wasn't sure.
Wait.
Yeah, when he was struck with lightning, Bobby, when they were walking in
30.
the yard, he said 30 years old.
Because
Oh,
now
30.
he's 33.
Okay, that makes more
32,
sense.
33,
I was
yeah.
like, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so like I was always thinking that Eddie was just a few years older than him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But like honestly, I'm not even sure because I honestly thought that like when Eddie and Maddie came, that they could have been around the same age. So honestly, I don't know. I'm just more confused the more
But
seasons
Maddie
we
is
get.
like 40 years old or
I
close to
know, and I
40,
don't
so
think
it's
Eddie's that quite old.
Right.
no, he's definitely not with the timeline. Again, the they cannot afford to answer at this point because they'd have to answer for their
Right.
inconsistencies. So
Because the inconsistencies that the math doesn't math, it's and many of us who know details of the series are gonna be like, yeah, no, that's wrong.
yeah. At this
Yeah,
point, I'm
like
just like, oh, he's like within a year or two either way of Buck, and that's where I leave it.
Yeah. In my brain, I'm like, Chris is 14, Eddie's at least 35 is kind of where my head
that
is.
was my thought process. I was just like, yeah, that
Because
totally
he was
makes
about
sense.
19 when.
Well, he joined the army. Shannon wasn't pregnant with Chris, but they got married, and then because he went into the military, and so he'd already been in the military at least a year or two before Chris was born.
No, they got married because Shannon was pregnant.
Yeah, that's how I understood it too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was within a year, I think is safe to say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they cleared that up. I want to say last
Wow.
season because Eddie had said they were high school sweethearts.
Yeah, and we hadn't exactly been sure when they necessarily got together. Like we're still putting pieces together, and any of this could change at any point in time. But
Well,
I feel like they probably given as much as they're going to give information about.
Right. I think what threw me off, or what made me think that they had just gotten married and then had Chris a little later, was that they had talked about in Eddie Begins that Eddie was going to basically re-enlist, and because he was at a time when he was going to get out, and Shannon was hopeful that he was getting out. But then when they found out about Chris's illnesses and all that he decided to re-enlist.
They didn't diagnose Chris until like he was a year or so old or something. Like it took a little while to diagnose him.
Right.
So I don't know.
So I might be off too,
sure.
but anyways, yeah. So it's funny, but I'm glad we all agree that like we totally would have like called their BS if it was like set at an age that was totally wrong.
Oh, I'm pretty
they
sure
were just something like, oh yeah, he's just 39, and we're like, no, that he's not.
Right.
That's like too old. It's also like kind of weird for me because I'm like, damn, I'm like, I'm like only about to be a few years off of like potentially how old Buck is. That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Also, like when with Lone Star, like I'm like also like about to be the same age that TK just turned. So timeline is not timelining, but like I'm okay with it. It's cool.
Right. So anyway, so while Buck is on the phone with Eddie, he asks Eddie about, is he getting ready for the big basketball weekend with Chris? And Eddie says, he didn't know. And he didn't know Chris and his dad had a chess tournament that weekend. And Buck's like, well, and then he talks about like, well, he probably is not going to go. And Buck's like, tells him to go anyways. It's not like he's not an Uber, he could totally go himself. And Eddie's like, yeah, but it's not that simple. Chris is in a good place right now, and he doesn't want to damage it because he's like reiterating things that his mom has said. And Eddie's like, yeah, but you're his dad, and he doesn't have a mom, and if you don't damage him, who will? It's your job.
That's fair.
I was like, oh
it was
yeah.
such a funny comment, but so true. Like, and so
Which is also funny because like Shannon died, and also Levy did hurt Chris already.
Yeah.
And Eddie has also hurt Chris. I think it's plenty time.
Yeah. So Buck convinces Eddie to take himself, so that he's gonna go, and asks Eddie if he wants to go, and Eddie's like, of course he does. And so Buck tells Eddie to dad up. I love that line.
I love
Dad
that.
up.
And then Eddie's
Not
like,
man up, dad.
Right, dad up. And Eddie's like, dad up. He's like, that's your advice. And Chim's like in the background. He's like, he agrees, and says Buck is right. And Eddie's like, you heard the whole thing? And Chim's like, yeah. And he's like, why didn't you remind us that it's Hen's birthday? And Eddie's like, he's a hanging up. He's like, Chim's like, wait, you have any good gift ideas? It was just such a it was almost like he didn't want to talk to anybody but Buck. And then when he found out Chim was there, he got all embarrassed about what he was talking about.
Right. Yeah, because like Buck is his person. Like, that's who he talks to. And like the same goes, like it's reciprocal, obviously. It goes for both of them. And it's just the fact that like Chim heard the whole thing. It was just the fact that like I didn't really realize certain things. Like, and then just the fact of where they were and Chim hearing the whole thing was funny. And then him just being like, why didn't you tell us it was Hen's birthday? Like that was so like Chim core, which I loved.
I also find it hilarious. He's like, do you have any gift ideas? Because Chim, you're her best friend. If you don't know gift ideas, no one does.
Right.
Honestly, getting gift ideas, it like is so hard sometimes. Like there's people like I struggle with sometimes because I'm just like sometimes it's like people have stuff and you don't want to just give people stuff that's gonna just sit around. And it's like, what do you get for somebody at a certain age where they don't really need anything? Like it's so hard.
Right.
I'm putting together a gift basket for my sister because her birthday just passed on the 2nd, and I'm like getting a couple things like self-care wise, but I'm mainly just getting like Trader Joe's treats because she doesn't have a Trader Joe's near her, and she loves some of those things. So I'm like, I'm putting together just a little gift basket. I'm gonna be like, here you go. Because for my birthday, she got like a self-care kit for me, and I was like, oh, good. I need to treat myself a little bit more. So it's little stuff like that. So yeah, it's just important to do. I don't know, important to do something. But it is kind of hard, especially as adults, to figure out what to get other adults.
It is like when people ask me what I want for my birthday or any like event, I'm like, I don't really know what to say because like technically speaking, I can really buy myself. Like if I want something, I will buy it for myself. Like I really want something, I will buy it. Like
I just give people my book list.
Yeah, that too.
Because books are expensive, so
like,
buy me a book.
I always share those things that are like the book bouquets, and I'm like, can somebody get me this? Because I would literally love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are cool ideas.
Yeah. It does get hard at a certain age where you're like, I could just buy myself something, but like
but also I'm also someone who's like I feel like I'm decently easy to shop for because like all my friends know like the fandoms I like and the different stuff I like, and also I'm not against like embracing my inner kid. So get me a Lego set, even if it's just like one of the $20 ones. I don't care. Like one of those things. Get me a blanket. Get me like a stuffed animal. I don't care. I love stuffed animals. Like I don't care. I'm 23 years old. I will be embracing and nurturing my inner child for as long as I want, and that includes doing things that are considered childish. I don't care.
Right.
Everyone should be a kid at heart.
Yes.
I agree. It's very therapeutic.
So speaking of gifts and Hen goes home and Karen is waiting and is so eager to say hi. And, obviously Hen knows that Chim sent a text message to her or called her to let her know.
I can only imagine what that went by like. SOS!
Right? Yeah, SOS. It's Hen's birthday. And Karen apologizes for forgetting her birthday. And she's like, I got her a gift. And Hen's like, did you take that out of your emergency gift cabinet 10 minutes ago? It was just like, first off, that Karen knows has one. And then, Hen pegged it right away.
Honestly, that's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea to have an emergency gift cabinet if you're able to, but also maybe not for your wife who knows that you have it.
Yeah. And Karen's like, did I mention how sorry I am? And then there's a knock at the door, and Hen gets it, and these last minute deliveries. And I love this big balloon bouquet she gets.
It's so many balloons.
It was like 50 balloons. And then that's from Chim, and she's like, I know it's from Chim because he always does like kooky stuff when he forgets things. And then Bobby sent her like a chocolate basket. And even Hen makes the comment. She's like, she doesn't understand how Karen of all people forgot. And Karen's like, she moved some things around in the calendar, and she guesses she erased Hen's birthday. And I'm like, oh gosh. Then there's another knock, and Hen yells, just leave it on the porch. And then in walks Hen's mom with the kids, and she's like, yeah, I could, but the child services would get called.
Yeah, that was a little funny.
That was kind of funny. Yeah, I was like, oh, whoop.
And then Den's like, I'm sorry, and happy birthday, and Mara is too. And then obviously Hen lets her slide because she's like, it is her first birthday with them. And then Hen asks her mom what her excuse is. Her mom's like, I'm old. She's like, I don't need an excuse.
I love Tony. I do. She did grate on my nerves a little bit in this because I was like, hey, yeah, you did push her out, but you think you remember.
Right. And then Hen's like, her mom's like, I birthed you, so you should be celebrating me. And Hen's like, I do on Mother's Day and your birthday.
Yeah.
And then, Hen's telling, Hen's mom's kind of sharing, like, well, you're kind of being a little bit silly. And Hen's like, I'm holding a balloon bouquet.
I'm sorry, I wanted to smack her. That was the one other time I wanted to smack another mother other than Helena this episode. I was like, Tony, shut up.
Right. Well, and Hen admits she feels silly for having something so embarrassing hurt so much. And then she storms off with her balloons and then comes back to get the chocolate.
I was like, that is me. Okay.
Like pulling all the balloons through the door frame was just hilarious, like trying to pull it.
Yeah.
That
was so funny.
Hen's mom being like, so does this mean no cake?
And you can see Karen just like
Karen's like, really? We really screwed up this year.
Yeah. You better make sure that's in the calendar like 10 times for next year. Like, you gotta make it up to her.
You saw like a digital calendar, like seriously.
This just reinforces my thing of whenever I eventually get a partner, this just reminds me to put like a reminder for their birthday, like 3 weeks in advance, just in case. Right. And then multiple reminders leading up. Because I would pass away if this ever happened. I would never forgive myself. And I wouldn't even want my partner to forgive me if that happened. I get things happen, I do. But also, your partner, of all things, like your partner and your children. I don't think you can get away with forgetting those.
Yeah, at least do something, Like I get like things aren't celebrated as much. Not that they shouldn't, but like I get that happens. And people like actively are like, well, we're not gonna really like celebrate it necessarily with gifts, but maybe we'll do something, which is fine. Like that's whatever. But like you never want to forget the kid's birthday, so at least hope that would never happen. So at least it wasn't that.
Right.
At least, yeah. I can't imagine that ever definitely happening, especially for like Hen and Karen. But yeah, it's it is that odd thing of, well, how do you like make up for that? I don't know. I have a theory that if people maybe felt more like they deserved to have special things, they would be more happy with their birthdays being celebrated or want more. I just kind of feel that fades into like obscurity when adulthood hits, and maybe you aren't always made to feel special anymore. That's just kind of my theory. Oh no. Anyway, that's all aside, but it's not silly to want your birthday celebrated or to be upset when it's forgotten.
Yeah,
exactly.
So then we see we're at Chris's chess tournament, and Eddie shows up kind of casually. So he's shows up after Chris and Ramon are, and this woman asks if he wants to sign in, and she asks who he's here for, and Eddie says, for Chris, and she's like, oh, we love Chris. And then she suggests, he wants that his dad is sitting right up front if Eddie wants to squeeze in by him. And Eddie's like,
and I'm like, his dad? What?
Yeah.
His what?
Like by Chris's dad?
Chris's dad? He's like, I'm standing right here.
Yeah, literally. I know I saw like one girl
and she's
that like,
yeah, Ramon. And I was like, so somehow these people started to think that Ramon was Chris's dad, whether it was specifically said that he was like he said it, or they just assumed.
I feel like they probably just assumed, like that's what I want to think at least. It
Ugh.
was just funny seeing people's reactions to it. Like there's like several people that I watch live reactions to, and this one girl I remember watching it, she was like, his what? His what? His
I know.
what?
I
I
was
go,
like,
girl, same. I had the
girl,
same
oh yeah.
reaction.
I was not happy.
We all did. And here's the thing, I think I'm just curious because he's been doing chess for a few months now. How have they never heard him say abuelo or granddad or anything like that? How have they never heard that?
Right.
I don't know. We don't know. We don't know how that happened. But oh, we were steaming.
Right.
Oh yes.
Yeah. And when Eddie had arrived, Chris was already in a match with someone. And you could see Ramon like kind of staring and like, trying to, and I was like, oh my God, he's like the worst coach ever. And I was like, is he trying to live vicariously through Chris in this tournament or what? So, and then Chris is like, he's getting nervous. You can tell he's starting to get stressed. And then he ends up getting sick during the match. And then obviously Eddie just runs in right away because he's going to, take care of his son. And of course, Ramon comes up, not bringing Chris's crutches, and is like, they're like, oh, what's going on? And Eddie's like, I got this, get his crutches. And I love how Eddie just kind of pushes his dad. It's like, just get away. Like, I'll take care of this. And then, Eddie takes Chris to the bathroom and they find out that, Chris is like, I hate chess.
I had a feeling.
He only is doing it because grandpa loves it. And, Eddie was like, yeah, I could tell you didn't like it. And then Eddie, he starts to say something, and then I was like, oh, where's this going? And then, basically Eddie says, I was going to ask you if you wanted to move back in with me, but he's like, I'm not anymore. I'm telling you, you're moving back in with me. And he's like, whether you like it or not. And Chris is like, so you'll be my dad again? I was like, oh. And Eddie's like, I've always been your dad, but it's time I start acting like it. And I loved that like scene. We don't know where Chris's mind is at. And we've never the show has never really talked about how Chris felt when he left, because Buck never offered for Chris to stay with him. And Eddie really didn't fight for Chris to stay. He was just letting his son go because that's what Chris wanted. But
he should have,
right.
It was good for him to abide by that. You can't make him stay.
Right. So
yeah,
in
that would
that
have ended way worse.
Right. And so
Yes.
how did Chris see that? And so I wonder if, because of the way his parents have been like meddling, if Chris was starting to feel like that his dad didn't want to be his dad, or they were putting that in his head that Eddie shouldn't be his dad, and that, we'll be here for you, and trying to like play Eddie as a bad guy in this situation or whatever. And so I just like, we don't know where Chris was at with that, and because we've never really talked about it.
I'm just gonna say, like, I know they cannot continue with this storyline that they have built up so much without actually having a conversation about it.
I agree.
Like, I'm sorry, we have gone through about a season, about a season-ish of like drama of Chris moving, which I'm glad he had a place to go, because it was not good for him to stay in that environment at that time, especially Eddie needed to get his head straight and figure out what was going on. I'm glad he had a place to go, but we cannot just end this storyline like this. This cannot be the end of it. They need to have a discussion. Chris is 14 years old. He can articulate what happened and why he was upset and why he was under the impression that Eddie wasn't being his dad again. Like, was this Ramon and Helena? Did Chris just get in his head about it? Were his friends or his teachers saying something? Like, what was happening in Chris's head? Now, I will say, like, I am still glad he went to Ramon and Helena's rather than staying with Buck or something. That is not Buck's responsibility.
Right.
He did not.
It's so unrealistic.
Exactly.
It's very much fan fiction. When I am good with fan fiction, I encourage people to do that. Write your heart out. But it is definitely, it would not have been good overall, because Buck would have been torn between supporting Eddie and also suddenly taking care of a 14-year-old.
Right.
Which hopefully that never happens, but he is now legally obligated to do so if something happens to Eddie, but
Yeah.
that shouldn't happen beforehand.
Right.
So,
Well, yeah,
Right.
exactly. And I think that's kind of where I'm coming from, because I just feel like there's a lot of unknowns in Chris's mind. And I did just read a fan fiction not long ago, and they brought out that point of, was it Helena being the one, and Helen and Ramon being the ones being like, yeah, your dad's just not capable of being your dad anymore. And so Chris got it in
Well,
his
they
head that
clearly
he wasn't, nor was he upset that Eddie didn't fight for him. But I'm like, I think at that moment, had Eddie tried to fight for Chris to stay, like, it would have been worse.
it would have been
So
so much worse.
it was better that he
Yeah.
let him go. But I would hope that all those times that Chris or Eddie tried to call and have a conversation with Chris to try and Zoom with him was proof that he was trying to stay in Chris's life. So where was Chris at? What was his parents telling him about that? And
My suspicion is that they weren't saying anything, not as of Chris, like not as of Eddie being a bad parent or anything. Children are smart; they figure it out.
Yeah.
It's clear, and I will speak more on this in the next scene when we get with Eddie. This is part of the whole thing I'm holding on for that scene because it's like the best to capitalize on that. It's clear that they consider unmet expectations with Eddie. It's clear that they feel disappointed in him in some ways. So I think Chris has been around his grandparents and has just picked up on some things. I don't think they're quite the sort to badmouth Eddie to his son, but I just think Chris is a very smart 14-year-old.
Yeah.
He has seen things, so I feel like he's maybe just gotten the wrong implied messages. Because it's just not the best environment for him to be in if he wants to think friendly about his father. So that's my suspicion.
Yeah, totally good suspicion.
But again, I hope they
Yeah.
actually talk about
Yeah.
it.
But I
Yeah, for sure.
loved this scene, and I cheered for it because I was like, yeah,
Mhm.
we've needed this. And Eddie needed to put his foot down, because I get where Eddie was coming from when he came back. He's like, I don't want to mess things up. I don't want to, hurt him. I don't want him to be upset with me. But I'm glad I'm glad he took Buck's advice to dad up, which is totally awesome. And that's a really cool phrase, by the way.
Yeah,
Dad
I've
up,
definitely
yeah.
heard that before.
Yeah. So our next scene is this guy again. Third time's not a charm, let's say that.
Yeah.
So this guy had to move out of his apartment because he lost his job. His fiance was sleeping with his cousin, so she was cheating on him.
And clearly doesn't seem to think there's anything wrong with her.
Right.
Like the way she was acting in that scene.
Yeah. And so his car is getting towed. He's living in it. So he was in the car while it was being towed. Which I'm a, road tripper, and like he was parked in a very terrible spot for that to, like, dude.
He was
So,
probably just on the street,
yeah.
which I'm also like not
Still in that
it's-
parking lot or something.
Yeah.
Totally
It was
didn't.
just kind of like I get that like he was parked illegally like on the street, but like you would think that they would at least like look in the windows to make sure nobody's sleeping in there and be like,
Mhm.
"Hey, you can't park here," and that kind of thing,
Right.
because he could have like gotten like seriously hurt.
Right.
This
Yeah.
actually reminds me of a scene in the 70s show Emergency, because this just brought one to mind. And it was literally, it was one of those car like junkyards where they crushed the cars, and they didn't look, and someone was in the car that they were crushing.
Yeah.
That I think managed to be saved in that show. They didn't do
Right.
tons of deaths in that one, even though they whenever they did, it really hit. But that's what it reminds me of. Is like you gotta look. I think that I don't think this was even this guy's car. I think he was just sleeping in there because he was homeless or something. But it wasn't great. So that's what this reminds me of. I'm like, oh, you just gotta look. You never know.
Right. Yeah. I've seen things similar to that too. So, and as he's getting towed, he's freaking out. So the door gets open and all his stuff starts falling out. And then you see him walking on the street with like this armload of stuff. And then somebody bumps into him, and it drops his mug. And then, he's trying to pick it up, and then one of the things he was carrying was a knife block, and so he grabs a knife and gets on the bus that these people that bumped into him got on.
Right, because
I
also
just
he's
see
hearing
him
all
snap.
these. Yeah, he snapped because he heard all these thoughts
Yeah.
of things that people have said to them, and it's just like weighs so much
Yeah.
on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, I don't know. I think I just feel bad for the guy.
I do
Like,
too,
he's an
which is
idiot,
why,
but it's not his fault. Like,
Right.
none of this
yeah,
was his fault. He just has the worst look of anyone in the world,
I know
really.
he does. Like he was
But
dealt like the worst hand ever, and
Mm-hmm.
it was
but
very
he also
deliberate.
seems like a really sweet guy. Like, when we first
Yeah,
meet him, he's tidying up the apartment and making everything all nice for him and
Mm-hmm.
his fiance,
Right.
even though he had just lost his job.
Yeah.
And like, yeah,
And
and
it,
he was like supporting this dickhead of a cousin that was living with them and clearly had made all this mess and was trying to get him an
right.
apartment. Like, he was like just a nice guy. I'm like, oh.
Yeah. So we see Athena responding to this bus hostage situation. And she's asking dispatch, what they know. And Maddie's like, the driver activated the silent alarm 5 minutes ago, and 2 passengers have texted 911 describing a white male suspect with the driver at knife point, forcing her to keep driving. And so far, it's just like, but they're going on the normal route. And so this guy, Archie, had been talking with the passenger, and he was telling Archie to put down the knife. And Archie was like, you see me now, because, through this whole thing, he's been feeling invisible. That's the whole
Mhm.
point of this episode. He's feeling invisible. People aren't seeing him. That's why they bumped into him. And he's like, basically like, look, you see me now. And, obviously the police had stopped the bus, which, then kind of crashed. And one of the guys was trying to get the knife from him, and unfortunately did not. And Archie ends up stabbing him. And so
By
then,
accident. Like, he
by,
literally just fell onto the knife.
yeah. And
yeah.
so it,
Interesting.
it wasn't like he actively like forced it, but like he, yeah,
He
rough
I think if
still
this
situation.
did
hadn't have
it.
happened, he wouldn't have actually hurt anybody.
Right.
But I don't know. It was just
Yeah.
bad luck.
So then we have a stab victim. So then the 118 arrives, and Athena says the suspect has already stabbed one hostage. And Bobby asks if he's been making demands. And Athena says not really. He's just being raving about how he matters and he won't be walked over, and something about, taking up space in the world. And like, as Hen's hearing this, she's like realizing, oh my God, who it is. And Hen asks if they got a description of him, and the SWAT commander comes over and starts showing them items left by the bus stop, and Hen knows it's Archie. Hen asks the commander to talk to him, I'm thinking like she's gonna get on the phone or the radio. No, she's gonna go
Yeah.
in there.
Oh, I knew exactly because I had seen different things, and then
Yeah.
I've seen similar things twists, and I knew that Hen would be the one to be on the bus, so that
Mhm.
wasn't really surprising to me at all.
Yeah, so then we see
Yeah.
the SWAT commander's like, well, he's armed and dangerous. And Hen's like, well, he might be armed, but he's definitely not dangerous.
Yeah.
She's like, we've already rescued him twice. And Hen says to trust her, and that she wants to rescue him again. And, the commander's kind of like asking Bobby what he thinks. And Bobby's like, I don't love it, but you could use a medic on there, if that kid's injured. So again, Hen puts a vest on, and then she asks him for any words of wisdom. And he's like, not to get on the bus.
Yeah.
So Hen calls for Archie and tells him she hears somebody needs medical treatment, and he tells her to go away, and she gets on the bus anyways. And he says he didn't mean to the things that got out of hand. And she says, I can see that. And she tells Archie that they need to let the guy go so he can get medical treatment. And she tells him that he has to let these people go. Once they're off the bus, Hen and him can walk off the bus. And Archie's like, well, how do you know that? And Hen's like, because she sees him, she sees what's going on. She's trying to acknowledge like where he's feeling and what's been going on.
Mhm.
He finally lets the passengers off. And then when it's just them, he tells Hen to just go. But she's like, I'm not going without him. And, she apologizes for what she said because she gave some bad advice. And then he's like, well, you gave him some great advice. And she says, yeah, but maybe it wasn't meant for him. It was meant for herself, which, there were some statements that she told him that definitely were more geared towards her, but fit his situation in the moment too.
Yeah.
And then Hen goes on to explain like how she was feeling like everybody in her life forgot about her. She wasn't really talking to him. It's like, he wasn't even there. Archie's like, wow. And then Hannah's like, I'm no better than the rest of them. Archie's like, no, except you got on this bus and helped me. And she says, she's helped him every time, and she asked him to drop the knife and take her hand and, so they can get out of there. And, Archie asked if he could go back to being invisible. And she's like, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's a little late for that one.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And, Archie says he doesn't want to go out there. And Hen's like, you do because it's my birthday, which is we'll talk about it later. So he does end up taking her hand and they walk off the bus and everybody's like, okay. And then he's like, oh, I have something for your birthday. And he starts to reach in his pocket.
He's such an idiot.
Which is like the worst time to do that because obviously SWAT is thinking that, he's going to pull a gun. So then SWAT shoots. And so Hen realizes what's happening and she like pins him to the ground and, shields him. And, he's like, you saved me again. And Hen's like, what were you doing? And he's like, well, he was getting her birthday present. And he pulls out this little keychain for the restaurant he used to work at, I think. And Athena's like, it's a keychain. And Archie's like, yeah, it's a chicken and like a hen. And Hen says she will treasure it.
You can tell she's just like, okay.
What do you mean you almost got us killed for this?
I know.
Right?
It was like as bad as it was a very sweet moment, but I'm just like, ooh, that
Like,
was so bad because
it was another instance of like he meant the best, but honey, you're an idiot.
That time, yeah.
Yeah, it was really bad timing. Like,
right.
Very sweet gesture, but like really not the best timing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously Athena tells him he's under arrest. And then we get the last Chris and Eddie scene of this episode. And it's definitely an interesting one. So Chris and Eddie had left the chess tournament in Eddie's car. And they get back to Eddie's parents' house. And Eddie's mom's on the porch. And she's like, what's going on? As Eddie's getting out and heading into the house. And, Eddie's asked if she has called his dad. And she says how, he said you pulled Chris from the tournament. Eddie's like, dad's in Lubbock, which is where the tournament was. And Eddie starts packing a bag for Chris. And his mom's like, what are you doing? And Eddie's like, he's just making sure Chris has everything he needs for tonight. And Eddie's mom like, so he's staying with you tonight? And Eddie's like, yeah, until he's 18 at least. And, he's like, I'll be back in a few days to get the rest of it, Eddie's mom and then his mom, in what pissed me off the most, was like, so you're disrupting his life again? And Eddie tells his mom, no, he's not disrupting his life. He is his life. And I'm like, yes, go Eddie, stand up.
I loved how he just went off on his mom and he really just stood up for himself because we really don't see him do that much with his parents, but just the fact that like he is really just standing up. I'm like, I was so proud of him.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
And Eddie's like, because I am his father, not Ramon. And I think that definitely was a trigger for Eddie, having somebody say that Ramon was Chris's dad. I think that was a huge trigger for Eddie to realize that he's really got to stand up, and he's finally standing up to his parents.
Yeah.
And Eddie's like, and he's like, Mom, you're not his mother, you're his grandmother, and he loves them, but he hates chess. And Eddie's mom's like, but he loves it. He's good at it. And Eddie's like, yeah, that reminds him of when he quit ballroom dance when he was 14. He's like, probably in the same room.
Yeah, this is my thing is with parents is some parents really force their kids to do all of these activities. I had several friends growing up that their parents had them in so many activities. They had like no free time. My parents like never really put us in like very many things or things at all. Like my mom never wanted to like force us to do different things. Like if we wanted to do things, it was because we wanted to do them. Like so I'm sure I know my mom like wished we were involved in more things, but like she wasn't gonna force us to do all these activities and have like no free time. Like I did Girl Scouts when I was younger and like I had that, but like it's some parents just really force their kids to do all these things, and for what? It's just like a lot of times the kids like aren't happy because they have no like free time and they're doing all these things, and it's just that's kind of the thing that like drives me nuts.
Right.
Yeah. I have a friend who has like an 8-year-old kid, and this kid's like in all the activities. And
Mhm.
from what I hear, they really enjoy like all the stuff they're doing. They're really good at it. Um, and it definitely gives them opportunities to, be around like out of the house and like
Right.
around their friends and stuff like that. And I think that's good. I also hope that
Mhm.
at some point, this kid also does get a little bit of a chance to rest at some point when they want to, but as long as they're like beneficial for them, it's good. But
Right.
I also never got a chance to do activities growing up
Yeah.
actually. Like I never got a chance to be involved in sports. I never got because I was homeschooled. My family was really poor. And
Yeah.
so I never got that opportunity. I wish I had, but there is a
Yeah.
limit and there is a line, and a lot of parents don't realize that. And I've seen that just with like, again, friends' families and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, this
Yeah, it
this
happens
was
a
a scene.
lot. And yeah, in this case, it's from the vibe that the conversation she then has with Eddie about how he, all that, which I'll talk about in a second. It definitely gets the vibe that they were like stage parents, and kind of putting their thumb on things, and
Yep.
like forcing them to. And then like as Eddie got better, and as Chris was getting better with chess, they were like pushing him into this. And Eddie, Chris was like, well, wait a second, I just want to learn how to play chess, not, like in these tournaments and everything. And, yes, he may be good at it, but doesn't mean he enjoys it. And you shouldn't be forcing your kid into something if they don't like doing it.
Not every hobby needs to become a job, and not every hobby
Exactly.
needs to become a competition.
Right.
Sometimes
I,
we just like doing things.
right. And Eddie said he was 14 years old when he quit ballroom dancing, and they probably had the same conversation they're about to have in that same room, because, we now find out that Chris is using Eddie's old
I
room.
liked that they used dance because obviously we
Yeah.
know that was like part of
Right.
Brian's life. So I think
Yeah.
Yeah.
that was just cool for them to use.
Well, and I think it
And
was
it also ties in the dance scene from before.
Right, exactly.
yes.
Yeah.
And it also ties into a comment that Eddie made when Chim was Chim was gone, and he was helping Hen as a paramedic, and Hen said something about hope you can keep up, and hope you can keep your dance. But there's some comment she made, and he's like, I'm a pretty good dancer, or something like that.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
For that. Huh.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he's like, I'm a good dancer.
That sounds about right. Like I feel like it's been referenced on occasion, but I'm glad because it ties in that it kind of ties in the dance scene having been used as like showing him finding joy
Yeah.
again because and I know the fucking some of the fandom fucking shat on him for it. Like they actually really were shitty about it. And I've been watching it from the side. I was like, it's one thing, it's not that big of a deal. Like he's allowed to fucking dance.
Right.
But I'm glad it got tied in like this because it is now
Yeah.
like, oh, that is actually a valid thing that
Yeah.
he just found joy
Right.
again through this.
Yeah. Which shows that he did at one point truly enjoy dancing. But when his parents started forcing him to go, and his mom, Eddie said he loved it until his parents made it all about trophies. And his mom was like, but you were on the road to a scholarship. You could have gone to college. And he's like, I could have gone to college anyways, but he chose not to. So
Right.
because they were
That is
forcing him, and
choice
and they
that
became
people
these
make.
stage parents who just kind of constantly were like, here's another competition. Let's get you another trophy. And like, that loses the fun.
Yeah.
Well, this ties into my thought from before, so I'm just gonna say it now.
Yeah.
I think that unless Eddie is out doing ballroom trophies or getting his Purple Heart or Medal of Honor, Silver Star, that's what it is, getting his Silver Star, or getting awarded like making out of his probationary year as a firefighter, unless he is doing something like that, they view him as their deadbeat son.
Yeah.
Because, and I think it's pretty obvious that they're generally traditional. In fact, I'm even surprised that they let Eddie get into ballroom dancing as their only son. But it's obvious that they view it pretty traditionally. I'm sure that him having, knocked up a girl and then later getting married to her and then having his marriage fall apart, in their eyes, that's kind of the sign of failure.
Yeah.
And they would have treated it as such, and we've seen them treat it as such, and we have seen them treat Shannon terribly.
Yeah.
Like
True.
they have been treating him as a deadbeat, which is why they took Chris again and have been using him like this because he is their chance to start over.
Yeah. And that's the vibe I've been getting from his parents in this situation, is like, they have been trying to use Chris as like a redo of Eddie.
Yeah, because they view Eddie as a lost cause.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is sad.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is fucked up.
Right. Well, and his mom even calls him out, when he says, he could have gone to college anyway, but he chose not to. Then his mom's response is, yeah, look at you now. You're a driver.
I know that pissed me off.
Yeah.
I was like, that is just like, that really made me mad because it's just like Eddie has, he was in the military. He was
Right.
he was a firefighter. We know he's gonna go back to that. So like,
Yeah.
being a driver is just temporary, and it's just that pisses me off. It's like because I've had people like say things about like me not have like so because some people have like legit like any job is fine as long as you're making money, but like I've had people be like, well, you should be doing this, and it's just
Right.
like like not everybody when they graduate college, get out of high school, not everyone goes to like this like career.
Right.
Like there sometimes that takes a lot longer than you're expecting, and like I have my own feelings about it, so like it's just like I don't like being that brought up, and I'm sure Eddie feels the same way because it's just like what he's doing his best not only for himself but also for his son.
Right.
But it's also like if we even look back to some of the scenes we got in Eddie Begins, for example, when his dad was talking about a silver star during like their dinner outside and stuff like that, they were kind of ignoring the circumstances in which this happened. Like he did not get a silver star because he, I don't know, shot most accurately. He was in a firefight which killed one of his team members.
Yeah.
Like,
and he rescued
this was not
people. Yeah.
He rescued a bunch of people from an awful situation, and this was an Eddie in his like young 20s.
Yeah.
Like he probably was around my age for perspective. Like just thinking about it, he was around my age, and that's terrifying, by the way. I can't imagine having been in that position. So what the hell? So yeah, no, it's so clear, and I'm like, fucking hell. Like Eddie is not perfect, but he does not deserve to be discounted like this by his parents, and no one does.
Exactly. Well,
Your parents are supposed to be the ones that believe in you.
And I think, and then even Ramon, like he was reading this, like the whole thing, like why he was getting the and it's like, he was so happy that he was getting this award. It's like, he didn't just get it. He earned it. He did something very tragic, and he went through something so tragic. And I imagine he also got a Purple Heart too, because that's when you're injured in combat. And yeah, I think they put their hope in the positives, but never, and all the negatives are just another reason why he screwed up his life and whatever.
Yeah.
Thankfully Eddie doesn't get into it with her, and she's talking, kind of giving him a hard time about being a driver, and he's like, yeah, in this case, getaway driver.
That was so funny.
I love that line.
I was such a good clapback. Like, yes, Eddie, go off, baby. Like, love it.
Right. And basically he says, I love you. He's like, I'm grateful that you were there when Chris needed you, but now he needs Eddie. Then Eddie leaves the house and puts the stuff in the car and gets in the car with Chris, and he's like, you ready? And Chris is like, punch it, Dad. Which is a huge step, because the last time Chris was in his Uber, he just didn't even treat him like his dad. So then we go back to Hen.
Steps are being made. Good ones.
So we go back to Hen. Hen's having a belated birthday dinner. Karen is reading some statement from an article about Hen saving, this guy. Firefighter Wilson's actions displayed the type of heroism that we've come to expect from members of the fire department, but she also demonstrated a kindness and understanding that marks not only a good firefighter, but a good person. So a comment was made about the article, the situation with this guy. And so they were reading it, and, of course, Athena's, sitting there, and she's like, tell me something I don't know. And Bobby's making a feast for them. He brings out this big plate of food, and, Bobby's like, I can't believe my wife forgot to remind me about Hen's birthday. And Athena's like, his wife can't believe her husband forgot to look at the calendar. And Hen says it might end up being the best birthday she's ever had. And Buck comes in the front of the house and he's like, okay, I've done this. He's listing off all these outdoor chores he's done. And he's like, and I'll come by tomorrow to take care of the cars. And Bobby's like, there's a to-go container, and so he made dinner for Buck. And of course, Karen's like, how long are you gonna make him do free yard work? And Hen's like, as long as he feels guilty.
Yeah, because Buck does have like that guilty conscience where he
Yes.
actively tries to make it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And stuff, and they're totally using, which honestly I'm not mad about. Like, oh, you know what? You do what you gotta do, but it's just funny.
Right. And she teases about, maybe until the fall, and then Hen, comments that she thinks this is the best birthday ever. And this is kind of the end of the episode. And I'm actually, what I will say is I'm glad that they chose to do a different character besides Buck, because we've already had several times where Buck has felt like the outsider.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's not married. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have anybody in his life. He doesn't have a lot of friends outside the firehouse. We had that whole storyline with Red and how he connected to Red and was worried that one day he might become Red because, he was divorced and, didn't have any family and kids and was, dying and didn't have anybody and didn't communicate with any of the guys from the station. So I'm so glad that they chose to do this storyline with somebody else and didn't do Buck, because then
Buck has enough of a storyline going on,
right,
like around him at this point. We didn't need to do him again.
Yeah. So it was nice to see somebody else in the 118 having that moment of feeling like they're the outsider or they're invisible. Not that I feel like I'm happy that it was Hen. I feel bad that she had to go through that. But it was nice to see somebody outside of Buck being the one kind of in that mindset,
and also having her moment of like being like in danger as well, because Hen is not often in danger,
right?
Like, and she is probably the only one of them that has avoided major hospital visits to this date. So like we didn't have her in the hospital or anything, but she was putting her neck out there and taking a risk. And it was great to see her being her badass, amazing self.
Yeah.
Again, it just also again, as sad as it was that she had to experience that, it's also, as you said, great to see that's not just Buck who has those moments, because it can get monotonous.
Right.
Oh yeah, for sure. I know, like when I first finished this episode, I was like, wow, that was like just such a fun episode. And like it was like the old 911, like the cult classic, like episode that just has like this, like obviously the person from the call that comes up frequently, and then it has like one storyline that carries out the whole episode. And I love the episodes that are kind of like less is more, where we're focusing on less things. I just feel like I love chaos, but I also love just like when we have like few storylines, because they're fun to talk about, but it's also like easier to follow. You don't have like a billion things happening where you're like, oh wait, I want to talk about this and this. Like,
we've had a couple of those lately,
Mm-hmm.
and I am definitely down for it, especially like OG feeling 911, where it's not just the heavy topics necessarily, or it is just the heavy topics, but not with a lot of noise, like the Eddie and Maddie centric episode last time, and now Eddie again, but now we're also having a Hen centric episode. Pretty great.
Yeah, I think it was a great episode, and I definitely cheered when seeing that Chris was moving back in with Eddie, and that's going to take some there's going to be some change, because it's not the house that Chris is used to with Eddie, and the house does need a lot of work. You can definitely tell that Eddie's been making changes and upgrading things, so I'm hopeful that continues. And I feel bad that Hen had to go through this, but I'm glad that it worked out in the end. People did acknowledge her and definitely tried to celebrate her in some way. Like, she wasn't just it wasn't just, oh, we forgot your birthday and then just move on. They actually acknowledged and wanted to make her feel special. And yeah, it was a good episode. The guy, I did feel bad for the guy, but then I'm like, you also he snapped in a way. I'm like, I don't know. I definitely went a little too far on that one, but I know why they did the storyline the way they did. So
yeah. I felt very conflicted about it, because the whole time I felt bad for him, and even in the end I still felt bad for him, because I'm like, everyone does have a breaking point. it's always unfortunate when you hit your breaking point. I've definitely done that a few times before, and it's always unfortunate in the times you do it when you really don't.
Yeah.
And I did still feel bad because like the promo made it seem like it was going to be like this. It was going to be more malicious and more like this really bad person, where really he's not. At the end of the day, he's not a bad person. He just made a really terrible mistake,
Yeah.
and just something really terrible did happen. Unfortunately, yeah, that's just how life goes, and you do have to face the consequences, even if you didn't mean to do what you did. So it's just, I don't know. It's like one of those episodes that have so many like meanings and so many feelings with it, and that's what I love about it too. And I love what we got with Eddie and Chris too. Like I knew that we would get to this point where it's Eddie and Chris again. So
Right.
I'm happy that we're getting close to there, and it makes me interested to see like where they go from here. Because honestly, like his Texas life is not seeming as like good as, not to say it's bad, but I just mean it's not. They made it seem like, oh, Chris is living his best life. He's into chess. He has all these friends and this kind of stuff. Where I feel like maybe Eddie's parents were trying to believe something
Yeah.
that wasn't necessarily the whole picture.
Yeah. Which then they were passing on like false information to Eddie.
Right.
Which then because a lot of what they said really upset Eddie, and like, yeah. So I feel like that was almost purposely to upset Eddie or to make him realize, oh yeah, his life is so much better here. I think Chris had a great life in LA. He had friends. He was constantly going out and hanging out with people. Yeah, he did have those times, like that time when he was like seeing a couple of girls and wasn't, they didn't know about it, and there was some things, but that was a learning experience for a teenager. It wasn't, that's not, that's normal stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But do you have any fan thoughts?
Yeah. I know we were talking about this before we started recording about how like we didn't get too many fan thoughts, but there were definitely consensuses. So we will also talk about that too. But I know, so like didn't love that almost everyone forgot Hen's birthday. I know we talked about that quite a bit. My thing with it is like, yeah, it did seem like the writing, whatever, that storyline was out of character, but like I feel like it comes with life experience that like sometimes like things happen, and like it does happen. Like, is it really unfortunate? Yes, it is. I won't discount that, but like it wasn't ill intended is what's most important. And I know that was a lot of people's like, a lot of people had like that thought. Like I know I saw video of somebody saying like how they really did not like that storyline because they were upset that they said, oh, nobody would forget Hen's birthday. Like, Chim would never forget, Karen would never forget, and they felt like it was out of character, like that would never happen. But like, we're all human, things do happen, and I know a lot of people had like that thought, but then other people were like, no, like it was very 50-50, I would say, on how people felt about it. People felt opposite ways on the spectrum, which I found so interesting. It is always interesting hearing people's varying opinions.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely heard some varied opinions online before I watched the episode. Not I definitely a lot of people were upset about the whole hen thing, and I can agree that it was out of character. And I think this
Right.
episode is generally not one you're supposed to look at beyond surface level, because kind of falls apart in some ways if you do. Not that this is a
Yeah.
bad episode. Like I didn't get to say my final thoughts on the episode, but that's
Oh, I'm sorry. I was gonna go back. It looked like you were gonna say something, and I was like, "Did she, Sarah?" I couldn't remember.
No.
Sorry.
I
Please go
didn't.
ahead and share.
It's okay. Essentially, my thoughts are that it was a fun episode, but it is like with important messages. In some ways, it did just feel like a filler episode that is not supposed to be looked deep at. Like, it's not really a filler episode because it's got important stuff in there with like Hen's storyline and Eddie's storyline. But as far as like the motivations behind everyone and like some of the routes they took with it, I don't know. I feel like a couple of times I felt like this season, like the writers are stuck rewatching like season 2 or 3 and are kind of going off of some of the characters, like personalities or motivations back then more than they are like 6 years later or whatever. And this felt a little bit like it with, everyone getting a birthday. But
Right.
it is like, I think the theme of my thoughts on it is that it's ultimately not a big deal, but they are like the fact that, hey, people wouldn't have behaved like this, or I feel like people made on like unequal efforts to make up for Hen's birthday in a way. And it definitely does irritate me a little bit to have seen like to see people nursing Buck's just generally guilty personality, because he is someone that will get the earth for you if he could to make up for his mistakes. But again, it's not that deep. And I have to realize that, or else I just get frustrated. But in this episode in general, it is just fun. I had a pretty fun time watching it. It doesn't go in like my favorites or anything, but maybe that's partially also because I felt a little bit personally attacked by some of the themes in this episode. But always love getting Hen content, always love getting Eddie and Chris content, and I just hope that we continue to get some resolution in that storyline instead of just leaving it there, or else I'm actually going to be annoyed. But yeah. But what I was gonna say was that also like the thing about Buck's end of things in the like making up for things did piss a lot of people off in my circle of like online, which I can see why. And that's why I brought it up like that, is because I get it and I understand why people are upset, because I kind of agree at the same time, but also like it got some people really heated about that. So that is probably one of the biggest things I have seen, other than why the fuck would they do that with Hen's birthday?
Right. So you're saying people got heated about Buck doing all the yard work?
Basically about Buck, it seeming like Buck's guilt is being nursed for more reward than other people's. Like Chimney is Hen's best friend, yet only sent a balloon bouquet, but he like that's fine, and that was the end of it, kind of deal. And people were like, so why does Buck have to do a lot? I understand it was supposed to just be a hee hee ha ha, but I think there's also something to be said for another hamster wheel getting off maybe at some point, or addressing this.
Yeah.
And I think people were upset about it.
Right.
So
I hear that.
That's interesting.
I was thinking possibly that it could have also been that, Hen is kind of one of those that like she doesn't need things. So like acts of service are more of her love language. So in this case, Buck doing chores for her might have been actually better than giving her some random stupid gift like a bouquet of balloons. Just not that Jim
or a pie. Even though that would have also counted as gift acts of service, I think.
True.
It takes a while to bake a pie.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
Who knows?
Yeah. All in all, I mean, it was a good episode, but yeah, I can see where people would be upset about that, and we'll grow from there, I'm sure. The promo. So this was episode 813. So next episode 814 and 815 is a 2-part thriller, Contagion. So the promo is Maddie answers a call from someone that says their lab is on fire. Not good. Bobby is asking dispatch what they can tell him about the lab, and Maddie says how it's designated for lethal and exotic viruses. So we find out this is a 2-parter. So we see them going in, and we see Bobby in the lab. There's an explosion. Buck is on the roof, not covered in his air mask, and there's somebody behind him that has a like suit on, decontamination suit on, and he's yelling, and Athena's asking, what can they do? And someone at the lab says, they can't they want to raise the door because there's people trapped inside, including what I think it's Bobby and possibly some others. And they're like, but if they lift the door, they would risk releasing a very dangerous virus to the public.
This just reminded me of a Star Wars Clone Wars episode, so that's maybe the funniest. Yeah, it's a 3-parter blue shadow virus where if they open up the lab, it releases a deadly virus that would exterminate half the galaxy. So that's what this is reminding me of.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are asking me, like, do you think it's the same lab that they showed in the beginning or in Lone Star at the end of the season? And I was like, Honestly, like it looks similar, but I'm not gonna say it's like the same thing. But like it is
Mhm.
very like it's not unlikely, but I also don't know yet, not seeing it.
Like the one that what lab in Lone Star? Not the nuclear reactor, right?
A lot of people thought that it was similar, which granted you're seeing this in a quick promo, and a lot of people are
Yeah.
like it could look similar inside just because of the lab, and also like
Yeah, they don't look all
they're
that different.
filmed around the same area, so the chances of them using some of the interior same shots is some could be a possibility, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. But I know a lot of people just thought that, so I just thought that was interesting.
I doubt they're doing the storyline of going to Texas for a lab emergency. I don't think it would blow up enough to
Well,
call
they don't film in
in
Texas,
California.
that's the thing.
No,
Mhm.
but that's what I am saying. Like if people are saying it's the same lab as in they're going to the lab in Texas. I don't know if that's what you're
Mm.
saying people are saying,
No.
but I'm like that's not
No,
what they're
people
doing.
think it's the same lab and they don't
Oh, it
film
might be
in
the same
Texas.
it might be
Yeah.
the same set. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I thought you were saying like show wise the same. I'm like, they're not going to
No.
Texas. They're
No, people
not going
know
to
that that's
Austin.
not a thing.
Right.
No, people
Okay,
think
I was
it's
just making
a
sure. But no.
Um,
I don't know. I'm very interested to see what's happening with this. I don't know.
yeah.
I know some things about what's coming, but not
Yeah.
obviously not everything.
I know,
Right.
and I know there's like a lot of like people have theories on like this two-part thing, and I I don't even know.
I
Yeah.
think
And
it's like also all but confirmed that Tommy's coming back as well. Like we know he's going to be in the two-parter, if nothing else, in the second episode of it. So
Oh,
there
I
is
hadn't heard
that.
that yet.
I'm pretty sure it has been all but officially confirmed. Like we know they were all filming in the same area on the same days.
yeah.
We've seen like behind the scenes, a couple like behind the scenes like sneaked photos, stuff like that. So it seems like he's going to be coming back in a work capacity, like
Yeah.
as a pilot, and a lot of
About damn
speculation happening
time.
there on about damn time. Please, I am just kind of picturing that for some reason, they're gonna need him to fly something, and so Buck has
I'm
to call him for help. Imagine him having
Honestly,
to call Tommy for help.
I
Like,
don't
listen,
even
I'm sorry.
know what to think anymore, just on
yeah.
several things.
Well,
It's
I know
just
he's also coming. Like there is like leaked footage of him back in the episodes afterwards.
Yeah.
So he's coming back at some point. I think it's in the two-parter. Is
Mhm.
all I'm saying.
Yeah, so I did know that they were, and I'm like, I've wanted like air rescues for a long time. I used to watch a series, it didn't last long, and it was set in San Francisco, and it was basically about a group of paramedics, and two of the paramedics often worked on a helicopter, and I loved those rescues because they were a little more intense than just your standard like car accident. But I also wanted to like want the fans to see what it's really like to have like a life flight or something, like when there's an emergency and how the helicopter deals with it and picks up patients to rush them to a hospital. Like that stuff we
Yeah.
don't see a lot, and I would love it to have more of it.
I'm just saying, and obviously we don't know exactly how things are going to play out. But if Tommy winds up being out around for a longer capacity, I want us to bring more air rescues in. I am
Me
exactly with
too.
you on that. Like, please, I love seeing the air
I
rescue.
think it'll give a different variety to the series and add more to it than it
We
is
need
more
we need
rescues,
something
more common things.
we need something changed up is all I'm gonna say. Like we have officially, we've had our ninth season confirmed. So
Yay!
we
yeah,
need
I
Woo
was about to
woo!
say that.
yeah,
Which is
like
funny
ninth season.
because I had said something before it was even confirmed. I had said last week, a couple days before it was confirmed, I was like, because I had just been online looking something up, and I had seen that the eighth season was confirmed like early April as well. And I was like, it was right before season 9 was confirmed, like 3 days before. And I was like, oh, season 8 was confirmed like around this day, literally last year. And I was like, oh, so that must mean
Yeah.
it was coming. So I knew like within a few weeks we get it, and it was just like a couple days later, and I was like, "See, I told you
Nice,
guys, I knew it."
right?
Yeah.
I
But ninth season, big thing.
I'm not
yeah.
surprised, but like it was just like it's still nice to hear because we're still
Mm-hmm.
like, we still have like episodes to go, and it's not like waiting till the last minute to be like, oh, we're renewed. Obviously, we know the ratings are good, and
Yeah.
stuff, but like it's still nice to hear.
Well, no
matter
new
what.
season is promised until you get that confirmation. So it's nice to have that because then you're like, okay, we're good for another year.
And so with the ninth season and quite potentially more seasons coming afterwards, like we're on a pretty good run. We have a lot of storylines we can still work with, a lot of material to do. But I just think it would do the show some good to add a little bit more variety, like show, I don't know, maybe someone get some training for water specialty rescues. Maybe we show some more air rescues. Like spice it up a little bit. Maybe not necessarily changing the dynamic team, though we have no idea what's coming with the rest of the season or whatever, but like just showing, like getting out there. As much as I'm happy to still have Hen in the show, I'm still so upset about the medical thing being dropped because it would have been such an interesting change. So I just need to bring back some more variety rather than just doing the same old.
Yeah, that would only have worked if they were gonna do a spinoff being a medical. Yeah, that's the only way I could see that working. Also, like for like different training things, the people in the cast would have had to get trained in these things, so it is a little bit more tricky. And also, I think if we add like these different elements in the show, like they can't keep them up, which is why I think they'd kind of stick to the basics and like sometimes bring in different things.
Well, maybe not an every episode kind of thing, but maybe like a twice a season air rescue or something. Like I'm not asking for much.
Or just, you know, because a lot of times, you know, many of the accidents they've had that people have been severely injured with, you know, those would have actually, you would have landed the helicopter as closest to the where the accident was to load a patient on to get him to the hospital quicker. So many of those accidents that we've had actually could have been life flight, but we up until season 7 we didn't have a pilot in the series until now, and then I think it opens up some doors if you know. And we unfortunately just got confirmation that even though 911 was renewed, SWAT was not, for the third time it's been canceled, so that's a whole separate thing. But
who knows if this one will stay or not,
right? So it Lou Ferrigno Jr. might have some time on his hands now that Rocker might not be around much longer.
I had heard about that a while ago. I think that happened like a month ago, I want to say. It was
I feel like SWAT is
recent.
always on the edge of being canceled for one reason or another, and it has, as you said, been canceled twice before. So who knows? I am still on the first season, so
I haven't even started yet. I do want to, guys, but like my TV list is like just as bad as like a book list.
Yeah, it is. Mine too.
Oh my god, yeah, same.
I did finally catch up to SWAT, but yes, I hear what you're saying.
Congratulations. I finished Heartstopper. That's about the best I can do as far as catching up on.
Right.
Shows.
And like it's funny because like we're in the early part of April, and like obviously like I think I even sent you guys a text. I'm like, I'm ignoring social media on the 1st. Like I was just like,
okay, I have something to say about that because I don't know if it was because I was so tired that day because I had worked that day, and normally I don't work on the days we record. So and also it was like my 5th or 6th day working in a row. I can't honestly remember. It might have been something like that. So I was just very tired. So honestly, I did not connect that in my brain that it was because of April Fools. And I was like, I had like an aha moment the next day when I did get sleep, and I was like, oh.
I think I've never been the best with April Fools to begin with. Because I already have trouble understanding when things are jokes. But I just love that the general mood on social media was don't you dare. There is enough happening right now.
Right.
We believe you if you said an orca was walking through downtown Baltimore.
Although, I kind of like don't believe certain things. So I even made this video where I was like, okay, April Fool's Day is like literally the worst day to be in a fandom.
Oh yeah, it is.
Like I just like, and it was just the fact that like I honestly was like, damn, I really should have thought of like some April Fool's joke to play. Just like fandom wise, and just not even like anything bad, but just like different things, because that would have been funny, but like I didn't. But I was just like, I had literally, because obviously there's been leaks and like people made videos on it, and then they were like, just kidding. Oh yeah, there were several articles that were like seemed like they were so real, but like I sussed it out real quick.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, really, guys? Really? Did we really have to do this? This is too soon.
I did want to mention one thing, and I'm going to keep this very politically very like simple. We are aware of some leaks of some fans. I'm not going to say what they are. We have our own theories. We're not going to talk about it, and we will address it at a later time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like, see, I want, like, I know personally, if you guys want to hear anybody talk about it, I
Mhm.
did make a video about the leaks where I
Yes.
did say these are leaks and it is like potential spoilers, just so
Mhm.
people, if you don't want to get spoiled, because I know that, like, me, since I make videos about like like a lot of
Mhm.
shows I watch, I know that I am going to have people comment, what do you think about this? So I cannot
Right.
avoid it, and like, that's just,
Mhm.
I put myself in this position, so honestly that's my own damn fault.
Right.
So I'm okay with it,
Yeah.
but like, so that's why I talk about it. So if you want to hear about it, just
Mhm.
check out my stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I will say about that. But I feel like for us as a podcast, it makes more sense to talk about these things closer to whatever is going on is going to air.
Yeah. Which
And
is
I
why.
feel like probably at the end of the two-parter we're gonna get some answers. If not,
Yeah.
if even if
Yeah.
it's just the promo, or we're gonna lead up
Right.
to something.
Yeah,
I
because we do have like the Contagion two-parter. We'll have those air
Mhm.
consecutively, like one week after the other, and then there's a break. There's not going to be an episode,
Forgot
I
we have
believe,
a
on the
break.
last end of April, and then they're gonna come back for the last three. So
Yeah.
I'm like, we are aware. We have our own thoughts. We've all discussed it in our like, group chat. It's been very active about it.
yeah,
Different
we're
theories.
talking about it off the podcast, but we
Yeah,
just don't want to
but
talk
we're
about
just
it
not going to talk about it here
quite
because
yet.
it is
Also,
too soon.
I will say, guys, I feel like it's a little too late for a lot of the fandom, but please tag spoilers when
Yeah.
you are posting about these leaks, because I'm on Tumblr and a lot, so I don't care about being spoiled myself. I really don't. But a lot of people of literally have the tag filter for spoilers and they still got spoiled.
Yeah.
And I just know it's devastated a lot of people, especially when we are multiple weeks out from getting any sort of
Right.
answers.
Yeah.
So just please be considerate of other people in your spaces and
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
go causing trouble, guys. You have your own
Yeah.
you have your own groups to talk
Right.
in.
Yeah. And
Yep.
just on spoilers in general, like I know I get comments when I literally put spoiler warnings for at least 3 seconds in the beginning of a video. People get mad, or like some people, and it's like, dude, I literally say spoilers in the
Mhm.
beginning of a video, not to mention it's covering the whole screen. If you're too oblivious to notice
Yeah.
that, then maybe just don't watch anything.
Yeah. And
At that point it's like, hey man, you gotta like curate
Right.
your own content and look after yourself. Like if you put
Right.
spoilers as a thing on the screen, then that's not on you. But
Right.
like a lot of
Yeah.
people did not at all warn about spoilers. They just posted photos.
Well, and I think it was hard too because I'm in a group and they specifically have a rule: do not post spoilers about the episodes. But that was like promos and stuff, like if you hear about a specific actual legit thing. But because this was on some random person on the street filming something, not even knowing what was going on, and people started sharing screen caps of their live that they were doing, they're like, but we don't know like what the spoiler is, so it was like people were mad because they got spoiled, but I'm like, we don't even know where that is in there. And that's I think what's been where the fandom has been disconnected, is because yes, technically it's a spoiler, but we don't know where it is. It's maybe something that's not going to even be used. We don't know.
Yeah.
So until it's actually talked about in a promo, for it to actually be more coming to life, then I feel like it's hard to say it's a spoiler, which is where some people were getting hung up on.
Also, I will say that I am a little bit frustrated that some people that are not even in the fandoms or even really like big into the show, like were acting, first of all, very embarrassingly when they were taking photos or videos of these leaks and then posting them. But also, these people know that it is a talking point and are doing it for that purpose. They are doing it to get attention and to get views and clicks, including
Mhm.
I heard that the person that did the live was actually extremely rude and was not like portraying themselves in a like good manner at all, from what I heard. So
Yeah,
like,
like
come on, guys, stop
yeah,
trying,
like
stop trying to
I know,
do
like
that. Yeah,
I
you're
have
an embarrassment.
yeah, that video, I saw a video of it today, and I took like a green screen video of it because I've like it's drafted right now. But basically my face in it, I was like rolling my eyes. I was just like, seriously, dude, because I was gonna talk about it. And it was just like people wanted Oliver to say hi. And Oliver walks by,
You're
and
working.
this guy, I don't know, he was like, oh, people want you to say hi. And Oliver looks so fed up, understandably so.
Yeah.
And I'm
Also,
just
Oliver
like,
is notoriously a bit of a bitch, and I love that for him. Like,
as he
you
should
think he's
be.
gonna do that?
Right.
As he should be, because this is like probably annoying enough where they're
Yeah.
trying to like obviously do their jobs, and like
Mm-hmm.
you have these annoying, like, I don't even know who any of these people are, and I'm just like, I don't know, they're like little reporter wannabes, whether they are or not, but like it's just like it's embarrassing.
It is. Yes. So
Yeah.
very long-winded statement
I
to
know
say
we just
we're
went out
aware
the huge
and we
ass
didn't want to
tangent.
talk
Are
about
you
it.
surprised?
But I
Yeah.
will say we do share our social media links. If you do want to ask us how we feel, let us know privately and we will talk about it. But we're just, for now, we're not going to talk about it on the podcast. Simple as that.
Agreed.
Thank you guys so much for joining us and listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to check out our website at 911lsroundup.com, where you can also listen to our podcast. You can follow the podcast on our socials at 911LS Roundup on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok. Be sure to join our Discord server. The link's in the description and on our website.
You guys can follow me, Katie, at Full of Carlos on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads.
You guys can follow me, Grace, at Rafa 911 on Instagram and Threads.
You can follow me, EJ, at EJ8302 on Instagram and Threads. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.